when you think of the spine as the main messenger, if there's issues there, it can really lead to issues throughout your whole body. If you don't address those issues, especially early on, and they develop into chronic health issues, you're going to get arthritis, you're going to get other health issues. So nowadays, if you have back pain, the odds of you having that limit your ability to live a healthy life as you get older are way higher than something like cancer.
Welcome back to this very special episode of the Diesel University podcast. Today we have a very special guest, a very educational guest. You know, a lot of the times on this podcast we like to have a lot of fun, but today we're going to have fun and we're going to learn a lot. And that's important to have that balance. Today we are speaking with Dr. Nicholas Young. He is a chiropractor, a concierge chiropractor here in Tampa, Florida. Travels around the state in the Tampa Bay area, cracking people, making them healthier, happier. Mr. Young, or Dr. Young, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we actually just got done with my first ever chiropractic adjustment, and you said that I was a little jacked up a little bit. You know, it's my first time, so can't expect me to be all loose and.
Most people the first time, they have years of wear and tear, bad posture. It's super popular nowadays to be on your phone, to be hunched forward, to be at a desk. You're in school right now, so it's very popular for people to have that forward shrimp posture. So almost always, if they don't get some sort of work done, they're not stretching, they have some sort of health issue, which most people have something going on, they're going to have a jacked up spine to some degree.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so my first question is, how did you get into chiropractic care?
That's a long story. You ready for it?
I'm ready for it.
Okay. All right. So when I was young, I had a lot of back pain, and I also couldn't sleep. And anyone that knows me, I tell this story, and I get asked it all the time. So I probably tell the story about once a week. But I had really bad back pain. And I come from a very traditionally medical family, like a very traditional medical family, where my mom's an ER nurse for a big hospital up in Fairfax, Virginia. And my dad's an attorney. Most of my family is attorneys, right? Very just like be a doctor, be a nurse, like something just well-known, or be a lawyer, right? So I had really bad back pain. I was 14. I used to play baseball. I used to work out a lot when I was younger and really train for baseball. And I just started developing some serious sleep issues and some serious low back pain. And, eventually it got to the point where my mom was like, all right, well, let's go try something. So you just like anything, you go to an MD, they look at you and they say, no, you're fine. And so I had an MD look at me and he's like, yeah, nothing's really going on. You're probably just growing, take some Advil, do some ice and you should be fine. Well, obviously tried that, didn't work. And so then my mom took me to an orthopedist. Eventually she got the MD to refer me to an orthopedist. And the orthopedist did an x-ray, also said very similar stuff. He gave me some stretches, he gave me a band, and the back pain and sleep issues persisted. So then I got some PT done. I went to the Washington Nationals PT person or whatever that was, also up in Fairfax, Virginia, and they were great. And I'm a big fan of PT, and it did help for certain things, like my hamstring at the time was also very tight. But my low back pain, sleep issues were still just not there. So then my mom at the hospital that she worked at, which is Inova Hospital, a very big hospital in Fairfax and in the Northern Virginia area. It's like Baycare down here, basically. And she was like, hey, like my son is getting pretty desperate. We don't want to just drug him up. Like something's going on. And so someone at the hospital referred my mom a chiropractor. And his name's actually Dr. Nick. He's my mentor, so coincidentally, Dr. Nick. He's my main mentor. Love him to this day. He's awesome. Same with his wife, Natasha. They did so much for me. And so anyways, I get an appointment, I go in, and keep in mind I'm 14, so I don't really know what's going on. My mom is figuring everything out for me. So at this point, I'm just like, it hurts. So I go in, he takes x-rays of my back, and he's like, dude, you have like scoliosis, like everything's out of whack, you're twisted, you're having crazy muscle spasms, let's get you adjusted. So I hop on the table, I go face down, and I remember he started adjusting me, like you'll see at the beginning of this episode, very similar to what I just did to you. And I remember it was pretty painful, but I was very inflamed. I was just in excruciating pain, like 10 out of 10, and just I couldn't sleep. And he did that, and then after he finished, after about 5 minutes later of doing everything, I legitimately fell asleep on the table. I fell asleep. And my mom is, a few feet away, obviously watching everything, just like a mom would. And she's like, what's going on? Why is he sleeping? Like, is he okay? And Dr. Nick at the time was like, yeah, he's fine. He just his spine was really bad, and he's finally able to sleep now. And so fell asleep for a few minutes. He's like, just sleep here for a little bit. I'm going to do another adjustment or two. I'll check up on you. And so he came back. Finally, I woke up, and then he was like, he's going to be pretty sore. Just have him go home, sleep. He can miss school. Like, this was really bad. And so I got in the car. My mom got me into the car, and I fell back asleep. And you can ask my mom this. She loves to tell the story too, but she was thinking, well, do I drive to the hospital or do I drive home? Because he's like just falling asleep all of a sudden. Like, it's like narcolepsy, basically. I just falling right asleep. And then I went home, fell back asleep for 14 hours that night, and I woke up. And, my mom had checked up on me and stuff. I remember I slept through school that day, too, at least the morning, from what I remember. And my mom was like, what's going on? Like, are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, Mom, like, I could finally sleep. Like, this, whatever just had done to me, I wish I had done years ago, because that was quick and easy, and I feel amazing. And I remember I woke up so refreshed, I could finally focus again, because when you're not sleeping, you're obviously going to have energy and focus issues. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, I was kind of upset as a kid. I was like, why didn't I get this done first, right? It was less invasive. It worked pretty quickly, way less expensive than some of these other visits, right? And also at the time, under my parents' insurance, my parents work for the federal government and stuff, a lot of stuff was covered with chiropractic. It was covered by chiropractic, or covered by insurance. So, like, why wasn't that done first? And so then, fast forward, graduate high school, I'm still getting adjusted. A lot of my issues just aren't issues anymore. Like, my back's feeling good. I'm able to work out. I'm able to sleep. It really helped me with baseball too, which I'm going to post another video on me adjusting a baseball player, and he was able to physically throw harder after, which is very easy to do if you fix a lot of biomechanical issues with the spine and the shoulder. So, but anyways, it really helped me. And then going through college, people were always like, well, what are you going to do? What do you want to do in life? What do you want to be? Businessman, entrepreneur, lawyer, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, let me do this chiropractic thing. Like, I have a cool story. It really helped me. There's a good career path if you are personable and know what you're doing. But that's just anything. You have to know what you're doing and be good with people. And so then I did 2 years at James Madison undergrad, and then I quickly transferred to chiropractic school, where I only did 1 more year of undergrad because they have an accelerated program. So I got my undergrad in 3 years technically, and then I did chiropractic school for 3.5 years, graduated, and then moved down here to Tampa, and the rest is history. So that's the long story of why the heck did I not get it done sooner? Why is this not more incorporated in the medical field when it's really not that invasive and was that quick and easy? I mean, it took 5 minutes. I mean, it was insane. And you're telling me I went to some of the top orthopedists and PTs and MDs, and they look at you like a number. And not to go on too much of a rant, but they have a certain protocol where if you have a muscular issue, they either refer you to PT or an orthopedist, or they give you muscle relaxers and Advil. And that happens to about 90% of the people that go see a medical doctor or a DO. Some DOs are great, some medical doctors are great, but just generally speaking, that's what they do because, if you go to an urgent care, you hurt your back, and you're like, I need something, they're going to give you painkillers, they might take an x-ray, they're going to say you're fine, they're probably not going to find any fractures, they're like, this is just muscular, if you want to, you can go see someone else, but their job at urgent care and as MDs is to make sure you don't have a crazy pathological condition going on, not necessarily to get actual manual therapy done and really address some of the muscular issues or even nerve issues. That's not really what they do or what they specialize in. And even if you go to a neurologist, they normally will get an MRI and they'll tell you, yeah, you can go do PT, or, yeah, you might need surgery, but, here's gabapentin. And that's what they do for a lot of people. I do know some neurologists and orthos personally, and I know some really good ones who aren't like that. But the majority of the medical system is set up that way for insurance purposes. It's not even them as doctors, but it's based on insurance, what is covered and what isn't covered. And most of the time, and when you go to any doctor's office, they ask you, what's your insurance? Is it covered? Right? Before they even know what you need. They ask if it's covered, because that tends to be the main driving factor in healthcare is how much do I have to pay? Is insurance going to cover it? If it's not, I'm not going to do it, right? It's not about, do you actually need this or do you not need this? And that's the big issue with a capitalistic healthcare society, because people do make money off of it, is you get drawn into issues like that. And that's why, people know of Big Pharma and they hear about the trillion-dollar industry it is. It's probably tens of trillions now. I don't even know off the top of my head. But that's why it's so popular, because there's so much money in it and it's so quick and easy. As far as, you come in, see an MD, you get your meds and you leave. And then they check up on you. They could even do a telehealth and check up on you. It's very, very good business model for them, not necessarily for the patient. The patient doesn't benefit from that. It does benefit some patients, but for the majority of Americans, look at the obesity epidemic. So I could keep ranting, but, I don't want to go too off topic.
No, please do. That's the beauty of a podcast. It's unstructured, unfiltered. So I love this stuff because, like I said before, when I was getting adjusted, some of these things, I wouldn't even think to ask about because, coming from an outside perspective, maybe I'm naive in a sense that I just think that everything's all sunshine and rainbows out there. But
well, when you're young, it can be that way. As you get older, and, not everyone, because a lot depends on, it's a nature versus nurture thing. Yes, you have some genetical issues that you're predisposed to, but a lot of it is the environment you put yourself in. So when you're younger, you can get away with a lot more. I'm 28 now, about to be 29, and I'll tell you, a night after drinking, you wake up next morning, you're like, whew, this is kicking my butt a little bit. And get your hormones in check too. If you have low test levels and some other stuff and, you get into other things like peptides, it can definitely help you and counteract that to some degree. Definitely see a medical provider. Don't buy stuff off the internet, off the black market. But it can definitely help prevent that. But that's why, when I was younger too, even when I was getting adjusted, I'm like, oh, I don't have to worry about this. I could eat whatever. I don't need sleep this night, or I could do this. And then you get to a certain age everyone, as they get older, tells you this, where, you start to slow down a little bit.
Yeah. To just think about like during the Revolutionary War, like you'd be like on the latter half of your life at 28 years old.
Yep.
Those guys lived to like 40. And
yep.
they
and that was it.
Yeah, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would never hear about. Some people lived older than that, but we've have a lot of things in our lives that have prolonged our health span and or lifespan.
And to play devil's advocate on that note, everything I said about Big Pharma and healthcare, they really helped raise the overall age. The average lifespan has increased because of developing oncology departments and research, and all of that is wonderful. But when it comes to musculoskeletal and some of these chronic health issues, if you don't address it from a natural standpoint to some degree, odds are you're decreasing your odds of regular traditional medicine covering your butt. And it gets to a certain age where, if you've been on high blood pressure meds for, 30 years, that they might not work, right? And even though their goal is to get you within a certain number, and that will prolong your life, eventually other things catch up to you. So if you don't make those lifestyle changes and those habit changes and try different things that are less invasive, even though they might not be covered by insurance, I'm a firm believer that results are huge. So if you hear good testimonials, you try it and it works, then that's all you can really ask for. A lot of times people don't try things. They hear other people's opinions about it and they don't understand what their motive is, right? Mainstream media. I can go on and on about that, right? Of the viewpoint of healthcare, right? Just in general, not even chiropractic, right? And most people know nowadays that it's a $1 trillion industry and there's a lot of incentives for doctors to push certain medicines and certain quotas, and they make you take certain medicines first before you take an actual medicine that works, right? And once again, that goes into, is this actually about me or is it just about insurance and money, right? And that's a huge issue with healthcare. It's really money care. And so, like I said, there are benefits where, infectious disease has definitely been controlled in the United States, but that's not really the issue anymore, right? You don't have to worry about certain crazy diseases, eventually or periodically you see like E. coli and stuff from Chipotle or whatever it was, or salmonella. Stuff like that happens, and that's always going to happen. But chronic health issues have become massive. And if you don't address that for your own body, not even just from a public standpoint, but for yourself and with how your body works, then you're going to start running into health issues, especially when you get into your 30s and 40s. They're going to catch up to you. Yeah.
Yeah. The analogy that I like to make with things like this is putting Band-Aids on bullet holes.
Yep.
You know, it's not like you're not getting surgery. You're just throwing a Band-Aid to temporary fixes, and then eventually your body adjusts and needs more, and like you said, it catches up to you.
And the same applies for chiropractic too. I mean, if you're doing the same thing over and over again and it's not working, maybe you need a different form of chiropractic. Maybe you need to see a different chiropractor. Maybe you need different therapies. Maybe you need massage therapy. Maybe you need to change your diet. Maybe you are putting something in your body you shouldn't be, right? And that can all prevent how chiropractic and other natural services work. Because, if you're getting zero sleep and I adjust you every single day, you're probably still going to have energy issues no matter what. So you have to really pinpoint down what specifically your issues are and what's limiting, or what's preventing you in your environment from healing. And figuring out from person to person or patient to patient is crucial in actually diagnosing someone properly. And I find that all the time. I mean, people are like, man, I just keep having this one issue. And I'm like, all right, well, let's start with sleep. Let's start with diet. Let's start with exercise. Let's start with your lifestyle. Let's start with something. I mean, people are like, oh yeah, well, I mean, I have sleep issues, but I take 60 milligrams of Adderall every day. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're probably going to develop sleep issues and you're going to wake up in the middle of the night because your nervous system just can't adapt to that. Even if your body starts to build a tolerance to it, it's just, it's hard to have restful sleep if you're taking Adderall, especially, past 1 p.m. in the day. So there's little things like that you find out as a chiropractor, just any medical provider, where you're like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense why. It's not that chiropractic's not working for you or that, the PT's not working for you. It's that you're physically doing something that's preventing it. And that's important for a chiropractor to figure out too, not to put the blame on the patient, but to really figure it out for them. I mean, that's part of the name of the game of anyone in the natural alternative healthcare industry, is figuring out that stuff that an MD might not focus on. And look at Ozempic, right? Ozempic, if you go to a medical doctor right now to ask for it, they're not going to really go and sit down with you and come up with a dietary plan. They might give you a sheet that says avoid these foods, but they're not going to really hold you accountable or say that's the solution. They're going to say, okay, well, let's give you the Ozempic. They make, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 for every time they prescribe it, and or however much it is, I don't even know. And then the person takes Ozempic and they lose 200 pounds, and then they say, well, you have to be on this the rest of your life, which is a whole nother conversation too when they say that. And then they don't make any of these lifestyle changes, and then either they build the tolerance to the drug, they get some adverse effect, and they have to either switch drugs, or they come off of it and they rebound. And the rebounding is almost even worse than just staying at a certain point in life just because it's a big shock to the body. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And then kind of speaking more about, maybe the mind and the connection between the mind and body. What are some of the things that you've observed with that connection, and how important do you think it is? I know that you've talked about sleep a lot. Like, what is the relationship between sleep and mental health and different aspects like that?
Massive. So a big foundation on what chiropractic is founded, so this is me kind of putting my chiropractic hat on, is there's 3 things that really cause interference in your nervous system. The first is emotions, right? Mental thoughts, mental stressors, right? Those can absolutely affect how your body functions, right? If you see a lion chasing you, then your body is going to start sending signals to release certain hormones to run away from that lion. It's not going to say, hey, it's time to eat and fall asleep, right? So mental is a big standpoint in figuring out if there's interference and what that interference is. 2 is physical and trauma, right? So obviously a car accident, or you get into a fight, or sports, right? That can obviously, cause issues in your spine and in your body. And the 3rd is chemical, right? What you put in your body, food and drugs, basically. How much water are you drinking? So the combination of those 3 things will help increase your mind-body connection if you improve those, right? If you improve your mental health, if you, aren't physically destroying yourself in the gym or a sport, if you're not putting garbage in, right? People know garbage in, garbage out. If you focus on those 3 things, then a lot of your lifestyle, and that's really what lifestyle is, those three things, those little chronic health issues tend to not develop, or they improve to some degree, right, depending on the specific issue. But for most people, they incorporate stuff like that. It really helps. So when you talk about mind-body connection, right, if you believe that you are sick and you believe you have certain issues that can't be fixed, that gets ingrained in you, and then that just becomes a way of life. And, anyone that challenges it, or says, maybe I can help with this, you probably are just like, no, that's BS, right? But, when you see it happen, you see some of these changes happen, right? Or you make some of these lifestyle changes and you see and feel yourself actually improve, that makes you a little more open-minded and optimistic. So, a lot of stuff that I see on a chiropractic level is people feel more relaxed, looser, sports performance, they sleep better, they digest food better, and a lot has to do with the nervous system and calming the nervous system down. Nowadays, most people are in a sympathetic state, which is a branch of the autonomic nervous system that you don't even control, but it's basically a stressed out state. And in that state, kind of like I was mentioning with a lion, if a lion's chasing you, you're not going to want to just have a meal. So what chiropractic does, massage does, yoga, meditation, is it helps calm the nervous system down, so you shift over from a sympathetic state, which is fight or flight, to a parasympathetic state, which is rest and digest. Being in that parasympathetic that tongue twister, parasympathetic state is crucial for healing, and different things that I just mentioned can help get you into that state. And even being able to quickly change states is actually very healthy. Most people are chronically in sympathetic, right? So things like Adderall, caffeine, nicotine, stimulants, right? Stress, financial stress, school, whatever it is. Those stressors get you into sympathetic. And one of the really good ways that chiropractic, massage, and everything in the natural field really works towards is getting you towards that parasympathetic state so your body can truly heal the way it's supposed to. And that's why people will say, man, I got 9 hours of sleep last night and I feel terrible. Well, maybe they didn't go into deep sleep because their body was still on edge. Or you hear people, all right, some, biohackers are what they call them now, natural lifestyle, and people trying to innovate traditional medicine or old traditional medicine ways with new innovative natural remedies. And they find, research-based ways to improve it. And they might get 6 hours of sleep and they might be ready to take on a whole day with no caffeine or stimulants. And that really comes down to the nervous system and being able to adapt properly. Which is just a human instinct and an animal instinct. Any animal or human should be able to quickly switch over or be in the right state at the right time. That way your body can function the way it's supposed to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's very insightful. I think our audience is hopefully learning a lot. Hopefully you guys are listening.
Yep.
Because I'm learning a lot as well.
Heck yeah.
Now, like you said, you yourself are a former athlete. You've worked with a lot of athletes. What do you think that a lot of athletes are doing wrong when it comes to recovery?
When you're an athlete, and this is my athlete brain speaking too, the only thing you care about is being the best at that sport, right? When you're younger, and I was absolutely guilty of this, and even working with some younger athletes now, you see it all the time where they just don't care about their body. They just care about just taking whatever they can, whether it's steroids, SARMs, anything to give them that extra edge without thinking longevity. So the athlete brain is only concerned about increasing performance. However, sometimes increasing performance involves not taking those things and taking a step back, which may temporarily limit you, maybe for a week or two if you stop taking caffeine or pre-workout, right? The next few days are going to suck. Or, if you come off a cycle, which is very popular in the sports world and everything, which, if you're professional, obviously you can't take it, but let's be real, a lot of people are finding ways around it. Then you can notice some decrease in performance. So that's a big thing with athletes is, they don't necessarily take longevity into consideration. They take care of short-term performance, or in 3 months, I need to be able to do this. I will sacrifice my body for it. And if you're at a professional level and you're making millions, if you're, Ohtani or any of these guys, or, Juan Soto, at the end of the day, you don't care. But I promise you those guys, and Tom Brady, for example, gets adjusted all the time. I mean, they take care of themselves to a certain degree, and they have some sort of balance. And that's normally what people figure out once they get to the age of 25, 30. They're like, okay, I really have to do a certain level of care for myself to keep going. When you're 20, 21, you could probably get away with it. But, if your goal is sports performance, then finding ways to get you to the next level safely and, down the road 20 years, you're not like, man, I wish I didn't do that, right? Because most athletes will tell you, especially football players, they'll tell you, man, once they're 30, 35, they start developing mental health issues. They have so much physical trauma to their body. I x-ray them and I'm like, man, you have a 70-year-old spine. And I get it. You want to be the best at your sport. It's just that mentality of being the best, being very competitive, right? It's a very primal instinct and a very alpha instinct, which is important to be the best at your sport. I get it. But, looking into some natural ways to really enhance it is crucial, because those are a lot safer. And I think nowadays too, and even to segue the conversation, it's becoming a lot more accepted. You look at Tampa, right? A very outdoor city. People are very fit. They care about their bodies. It's becoming a lot more accepted to do those things in the younger generation. The older generations were very content with, man, I go once a year to the doctor. They do a regular blood panel. They do a few exams and then I'm good, right? And then, that's it. They don't care necessarily about chronic health. They look for trends, which is still important. But, once again, we have a massive obesity epidemic. More people are obese in America than not. And, something's not working. It's really because of that. And so nowadays, in our younger generations, people are much more receptive to more alternative medicine because they need it more than ever, because there's so many new drugs coming out or this, that, and there's not necessarily long-term research. Ozempic is a great example of, hey, you can lose this weight. This is what hydroxycut was, 20, 30 years ago, or whenever I was born. And, it was very popular, but had a lot of side effects. Ozempic is very similar with, yes, it may have less side effects because it's a peptide, and it is a safer class of drugs technically, but, if you don't use it responsibly, you're going to develop issues. So I think it's pretty cool, and I'm noticing more and more that the younger generations, not that they don't question chiropractic, and I encourage people to question chiropractic or any alternative medicine provider, because if they can't explain what they're doing, at least to some degree, I get it. It can sound cuckoo or it might be BS. And that's why my main philosophy is results, right? Okay, even if it sounds cuckoo, try it. If you feel better, then, cool. If you didn't, I get it. I'm the same way. I would be like, why would I spend my money on it if it didn't help me, right? So results driven is really what we need to focus on. And you need to find someone who can really show you actual markers of improvement, whether it's, okay, I can sleep more now. Okay, I can throw harder in baseball. Okay, I have more energy throughout the day. I normally need an energy drink at 3 p.m. and now I don't, or I don't think about it. Or my relationships have improved. I'm, more confident, right? Stuff like that can happen, especially initially when you switch over to different alternative remedies for a number of things. There's always a transition, but once your body adapts, then it realizes that that's a better way, and that's really more of the way our bodies are made. And so your body eventually realizes that and likes it better, and it's much more sustainable too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of spreading more awareness and educating the general public about some of the benefits of alternative medicine and breaking the stigma behind, just going to your general healthcare provider and, getting prescribed some drug that you don't really need to be on. What role, and I know that this is something that you're passionate about or more recently passionate about, what role do you think social media has in educating that next generation of whether it's athletes or just the general populace?
Yeah, there's a few answers to that question. I think any doctor, the doctor actually means educator. Fun fact, right? Some people know that, some people don't, but any good doctor should be able to educate you, going back to what I was saying, of what they're doing and why they're doing it, and the risks with it too. That's really what informed consent is. Whenever you go to any medical provider, you sign a form that says, I understand the risks, and if something happens, it's on me. And yes, there's malpractice and all sorts of other stuff, but ultimately it's a risk to some degree. That's just how medicine works. So educating is huge, and finding out the best way to educate is massive. In the healthcare field, there's a lot of opinionated people. I tend to be much more open-minded, and there's a reason for that, and it's because I don't want to be naive to myself. If there is something out there that's even better than what I do, I want to learn it because it can help my patients. And that's what really being a doctor is all about. It's finding the best way to help your patients, the safest way, and obviously the most researched and effective way, right? And research can be difficult in the chiropractic field. One of the reasons that in the traditional medical field, right, just MDs and DOs, they have a ton of research is because they can do double-blind studies, right? They can give one person a placebo drug and the other person not a placebo drug and see if it works. Well, our bodies are much more complex than that. And yes, when you do those, you can have controls and figure out if something really works. But in the chiropractic world, if two people have neck pain, they might have complete different issues and need complete different techniques. So it's really hard to prove it. And so that's been a limitation in chiropractic as far as why, if you have neck pain, why is there not research of what you're doing can really work? And it's not that there's not research, it's that there's just a lot of case studies, meaning they test one person, they do a technique, and they see if they improve, right? It's not necessarily double blind. Because once again, if you have 50 people with neck pain and 50 people without neck pain and you adjust them, they might not all respond the same. As opposed to medicine, they tend to have a big group that does respond the same. They just maybe have different symptoms, or side effects, to different drugs. So that's been an issue, but what I like to do, and I like to focus on, is finding out what specifically their issue is and meeting the patient where they're at. What I mean by that is if someone is like, man, I don't believe in chiropractic, which is a question I get all the time, and I actually love answering it because I used to not believe in chiropractic too until I got it done. And I didn't even want to get it done. My mom forced me to. So I get it. I'm very empathetic when it comes to that question. And once again, my thing is, there's not many side effects from it. You need to find someone good. If you haven't tried it, then how can you truly form an opinion for it, right? And not everyone responds the same way. Not everyone has the same story I did with when I got adjusted, I fell asleep on the table. It's pretty crazy, and you're like, really? Did that really happen? But it actually did. And so obviously I'm very passionate about it. But everyone responds differently, so it's really important to figure out where that patient is at, do the best techniques for them, give them the best advice, right? I'm not going to give the same advice or the same treatment necessarily to someone who's 65 as opposed to 20, right? In terms of they just might need different things, right? Obviously, you treat everyone with respect and everything and do the best for the patient. But, you have to be able to be very personable and communicate well to that patient and meet them where they're at. Because there's some people that say, man, I just don't believe in chiropractic. I don't want to talk to you. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, if things change, let me know. I'm not going to force it in their mouth, because if I didn't believe in something, I probably wouldn't want that myself, and I get it, right? But being open-minded and educating people in a way that can relate to a lot of people and to be results-driven and really show on myself how it affected me can speak to a lot of people, because then they throw all the BS to the side and they're like, wait, I have that issue. Maybe I do need to try that. And then suddenly the article they read 10 years ago about someone who got adjusted and had a stroke or whatever leaves their mind. And so I think focusing on things like that is really important. And, us chiropractors, and I could go on and on about the drama in the chiropractic field. There's really two subcategories in the chiropractic field. There's what's called evidence-based chiropractors and subluxation-based chiropractors. I tend to be a mixture of both. I want there to be some evidence, to show it works, because that's just the world we live in now to some degree. And then subluxation is a little more natural, like focus on the alignment, focusing on, some more natural remedies and things like that. I think a good chiropractor, their job is to find a safe way to relieve a patient's symptoms and improve their life. And I think educating the general public in that sense is crucial, because then to anyone, right, if it's a business, right, and in the healthcare world and the world in general, if you provide a service, right, you ultimately want a certain result, right? If you go to Chipotle, you want a bowl. If you come to a chiropractor with pain or dysfunction, you want it fixed. So I think making it that black and white and really doing that in a safe and effective way where chiropractors are happy, because us chiropractors can be our own demise, and really working together is huge, because with that big divide in chiropractic, which is honestly kind of mellowed out, at least I tend to tune it out because I think it just gets in the way of helping people, and I don't need extra drama and stress in my life. I try to stay out of all that. Figuring that out will help have a more clear message for society. But honestly, one of the reasons why, going back to everything I was saying, there's not a clear message is because people have different techniques and do different things and treat different people. And in the, MD traditional medical world, a lot of it's not based on the doctor per se. It's based on the insurance companies and what they do and don't approve. So if it was that black or white for chiropractic, I promise you the chiropractic message would be very straight, clear. And if you Google it, there's different definitions, there's all sorts of stuff you read. And the reason why is because it's a little more free-spirited and people can really voice their opinions. I guarantee you if a lot of MDs and DOs were able to voice their opinions, you would get a massive mixed message online with traditional medicine. And that's actually, it's a good and a bad thing. It's good because you can meet a chiro who isn't filtered and they can do what they need to do. Or you can meet a chiro who is a sellout and they only care if their insurance is covered and that they look at you just as a number and a money sign. And so, it's a good and a bad thing. And I think that's why it's more important than ever to find someone you trust, find someone who's good with people, find someone who can get you the results you're looking for. And doing that in a safe and effective manner is huge. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that I actually brought up to you a little bit earlier, and I know you started to go into it a little bit, was self-adjustment. Mm-hmm. I know that that's something that I've been told to stop doing and to stay away from. Mm-hmm. I know it's something that you have your own opinion on. Mm-hmm. Should people be self-adjusting? And if so, is there a right way to do it?
Well, there are definitely safer ways than more dangerous ways to do it. I mean, if you go on TikTok now, you can look up, I know some PTs and chiros have these different, they'll be like, step 1, put your arm here. Step 2, do different things like that. Here's the thing with self-adjusting. If I turn my head and it pops, right, and I don't force it, it's fine. I mean, the joints are meant to pop to a certain degree, right? You have fluid in your joints, specifically synovial fluid. And the popping noise is when a gas bubble forms and gets released. So think of kind of like blowing bubbles underwater, and they kind of do-do-do-do. That's what's happening in your joints. The joints are designed to do that. So if you're turning your head or, you you kind of bend your head a little bit and it pops, not a big deal, right? So if that's your version of self-adjusting, no problem with that. When you physically force self-adjustments, that's where you can run into issues, right? Now, if you have a healthy spine and not really any musculoskeletal issues, no nerve issues, are you going to be fine? Probably, right? But what happens is people do it in an unsafe way, and our joints really have certain ways that they glide. And one of the things they teach us in chiropractic school is to adjust through certain joint plane lines and certain ways and different parts of the spine. And that's crucial in doing it effectively, right? Just getting a pop or a crack will probably give you a few minutes of relief, and then next thing you know, over the next week, you're doing it every 5 minutes and it just turns into a tick. Then it's not really getting you much benefit. Does it give you a few minutes of relief? Yeah, but is it really getting you any benefit long term? Probably not, which is why it turns into a tick or a chronic thing. I personally don't do it. My hip pops occasionally if I stretch it, and I don't really try to force it, but it just kind of pops sometimes, and it doesn't hurt. It's just, if you have certain conditions, right, and you chronically do that, you can develop some instability in some of those joints, right? And I mean, not even a chiropractor is going to adjust you every 5 minutes. Sure, there's some chiropractors that adjust you a few times a week, depending on your issues, but once again, they do it a certain way that it's safer on the joints and the ligaments, right? And I'm not chronically twisting my head and going like this every second, which could, stress some of the ligaments and even some of the blood vessels, depending on, if you have certain things going on. So I always tell people, don't force it, right? If you feel the need to force it, go to a chiropractor or go see someone because they can do it in a safer way usually. And, there's no point in putting that stress on yourself, right? If you do it every once in a while, I mean, that's life. I get it. But I just wouldn't recommend it because there's safer and better ways to do it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then kind of going back to the athlete thing, I know I'm kind of bouncing around all over the place here. All good. But my understanding is that the spine is kind of like if you see your body as like a tree, the spine is obviously like the tree trunk, mm-hmm. right? It's the base of your body's composition. How important is a healthy spine for athletes for speed output, power output, strength output, just overall athletic performance?
Massive. So that's actually a really good question because there's a bunch of different aspects to it, right? So there's two different parts of the nervous system. There's a few different branches of the nervous system, but your central nervous system has your brain and your spinal cord, right? Those are your main communication centers, right? Your brain obviously is the main one, and what it does is it shoots a signal down your spinal cord. If I want to move my arm, right, left side of my brain sends a signal down my spinal cord and then to some peripheral nerves and has me move my arm, right? So communication is huge. That's what the nervous system is. It's your communication system. It's your UPS or USPS for your body. And if there's blockages, roadblocks, it can decrease that signal, right, to a certain degree. And that's actually what nerve conduction velocity tests do, and they can see if you actually have, less of a signal to a certain muscle for like a contraction. Fixing that or improving that to a certain degree will enhance their communication and your ability to perform at a higher level because your reflexes will improve, your motor coordination will improve, and other things will improve. And a lot of people, and this is specifically for athletes and bodybuilders, they know that the first few months when you start a workout program, you're not normally building much muscle, you're more enhancing your nervous system and your motor units. Basically, what that means is you're enhancing the signal sent from your brain to your muscle to have it contract. That improves the first few months, and then you get hypertrophy, aka muscle gain. So most of the time, your body really wants to improve the signal first, and then over time, it adapts in other ways, whether it's increasing muscle, decreasing muscle, an injury, or something like that. So when you think of the spine as the main messenger, if there's issues there, it can really lead to issues throughout your whole body because every branch of every nerve comes from either the brain, spinal cord, brain stem, different areas right there. And if you don't address that area, you could address a peripheral nerve all day, but if that issue is coming from your spinal cord or your neck or your brain, you're probably not going to fix it. And maybe could you improve it? Maybe. And there's some techniques you can do, and I can go down a rabbit hole on that. But the main thing is your spine and your brain, right? And a lot of people know this with dentists, right? Teeth and teeth health is huge for overall health, right? Well, spine health is massive too for, are you going to develop headaches? Are you going to develop sciatica? Are you going to develop, other chronic mobility issues, which I think low back pain is the number 3 or 2 reason people get disability in America, right? So nowadays, if you have back pain, the odds of you having that limit your ability to live a healthy life as you get older are way higher than something like cancer, which might sound crazy, but there are some really good drugs, and not everyone gets cancer, that can actually help improve your quality of life. And that's just statistically speaking, right? More people have disability from low back pain and sciatica than something like cancer, right? Obviously, cancer is not a good thing. You don't want it, and it's definitely bad. But just in terms of the spine health, if you don't address those issues, especially early on, and they develop into chronic health issues, you're going to get arthritis, you're going to get other health issues, you'll get nervous system issues, you can develop cardiovascular issues too, because there's a neurovascular bundle, which a nerve and some blood vessels are carried together, and you can really develop some serious issues. So if you don't address the brain and the spine, what oftentimes happens is you develop other issues that can often be traced back to the main control centers, right? If a car is, dying, and you don't look at the engine, and you look at everything else, you look at the tires, you look at, all sorts of other stuff, and you're like, man, the car's not working, I replaced the tires and it's still not working, that's not going to do you much good. You're going to want to look at the engine too. And that's the same idea with the brain and the spinal cord. So it's crucial for any athlete or just anyone in general who, wants to improve their health to improve that, or at least figure out if there is an issue there, and work on that. Yeah.
We've never had an episode where people are learning this much. Usually it's just
Cool.
Tell me about how you started posting on social media and how you blew up, and
Yeah.
this is good.
Well, for me, it's doing gray area street adjusting.
Yeah, no, that's you don't really see anybody doing that too.
Yeah, there's a reason why. I've consulted a few attorneys, and the reason it's okay is because, you do an informed consent, and I'm a chiropractor, I'm allowed to adjust. There's no specific state law in Florida, specifically I'm licensed in the state of Florida, saying you cannot adjust on the street. Now, could they get mad and say, well, it was noisy, maybe you didn't deliver the best adjustment? I mean, sure, but that's not regulated by state laws. That's more regulated by a group of board people that says, hey, dickwad, don't do that. That's not professional. But legally speaking, there's no issues. I mean, a cop can't arrest me for that. And honestly, it's entertaining. You ask someone a question like, hey, is it a red flag to date a chiropractor, or how many bones are in the body, and then an adjustment? It's cool, and people can resonate with that. And honestly, that has a lot more people interested in chiropractic than me sitting on a microphone and talking for 10 minutes about how your nervous system affects the rest of your body. I mean, sure that some people are interested in that, and it's cool. But sometimes people are like, man, just like crack me or just get me adjusted, or, I want this, and it feels better after. Sometimes it really is that simple. And if people and medical doctors and chiropractors overcomplicate it, people will just tune away. I mean, the average attention span, if you've listened to the podcast this long, it's honestly impressive, because it's a lot, right? It's a lot of processing power, brain power to really get that across. And so when you have something like street adjusting, and since I'm a chiropractor, I'm not doing crazy adjustments. They're the same exact adjustments I would do in an office with informed consent. So there's nothing really wrong with that. Then why the hell not do it? It's pretty cool too. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, it's all about the doctors are educators, and it's the manner in which you educate people in the digital age, I think, is important. And I think that you've actually been somebody who's been really creative about that. I think that the traditional way to market yourself as a chiropractor in social media is to just do the ASMR popping and the Y straps and all that, all that stuff. But I think that you have a unique approach to it, and I commend you for it.
I appreciate it.
You're doing a good job. So yeah, social media is a tool, but do you think that there is a lot of BS on social media about chiropractic medicine?
For sure. I mean, that goes into everything we really talked about, and being sellouts to the healthcare field and caring what other people think. PTs love to roast chiropractors on social media, and chiropractors love to roast them back. My thing is, if you really have that much time to post all these videos roasting another profession, then that does say something about you yourself as a person, right? I mean, even when I was talking about MDs and DOs, like, they have a place in society, and they helped increase the lifespan. And if you have a serious health issue and you're in debilitating pain, odds are you probably should go to urgent care or the hospital, right? So even me right there is not being naive to the fact of, I'm a chiropractor, I want you to still get adjusted, and it can still benefit you. It's just being real with people. And sometimes people are so concerned about other people's opinions, and they don't actually know the person. They just see what they post, that it's clipped up, and they take a 15-second clip, and they're like, this is terrible, why would they do this? And they don't do their own research. Maybe the PT or whoever's posting about it is more concerned about getting views and getting their own clients and talking about why PT is amazing. But honestly, if a PT is really that good, if a chiropractor is really that good, none of that really matters. What matters is, do you have a patient base that gets adjusted and you get results that's safe and effective? And if that answer is yes, then I promise you there's a lot of chiropractors I know that make really good money, have a ton of patients they adjust, and they don't even go on social media, right? The people that tend to go on social media to bring down another profession oftentimes have some sort of insecurity or some sort of ulterior motive that really doesn't actually benefit them. Sure that it's very niche, and they'll have some people that are like, yeah, man, I went to a chiropractor and he made me worse. And then the PT's gonna be like, yeah, see, it doesn't work. And it's like, well, I mean, I could say the same about a dentist where, a dentist accidentally knocked a tooth out, or he filled my tooth incorrectly, and he was terrible. I'm like, yeah, screw dentist. My tooth was fine before that. I'm like, yeah, all dentists suck. I'm going to go to an orthodontist. It's all ridiculous. So what matters is that you don't necessarily listen to other people's words that talk about something. It's that you listen to the person that actually is doing the service and seeing what they're doing and why they're doing it, and explain it in an effective manner. And I guarantee you, when you meet more than half these people on social media, because I've met some people on social media, and I'm like, you are not like that in person at all. And that's when there's a facade and that it's not genuine. And even to segue that, people know nowadays, obviously with AI expanding, having a personal brand is massive, and becoming a genuine version of yourself online is huge. And I try to be as myself as possible online. Obviously I clip different things and throw things out, but having that be a consistent message across is really important, because we do need to spread more actual positivity and real results on social media now more than ever. Because if you go on Instagram, you go on TikTok is terrible now, because every time you scroll on TikTok, it's just an ad, right? It's just money, right? So you're just like scroll, sponsor, this. You're like, all right, well, this is not why I'm on TikTok, or this is not why I'm on Instagram. I want to see authentic videos of people yapping where, they maybe stutter in the video, or maybe they say something not the best way, but it's more genuine, right? And, when you see that, people tend to resonate with you more. And could it be more niche? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, that's who you are as a person. And social media should be a gateway to connect you as a person with someone else authentically. And if you don't do that, it eventually catches up to you in some way, shape, or form. Or you just spend most of your day just ranting or hating on people. And then you look back and you're like, man, my purpose is not being fulfilled here, right? And I think social media really should be used in a way that brings people together and allows, if I have a message, to reach the whole world. Because if it doesn't, then I'm doing a disservice to my patients, to myself, and everything. And if I don't do that effectively and with, a genuine side of me, then people are going to see through it, and it's actually going to create more chaos. So I think, when you look at social media, half the time it's, viral hooks and clickbait and this and that, which I get it. People make money off of that and they want to build a following. But eventually it catches up to them, because eventually people are going to figure out who you are as a person, especially as you get bigger. And if you aren't yourself, or you aren't, acting like that in some way, you're going to start to get roasted, and you're not going to, you're going to lose your following. So, that more than ever is huge. And I think that's even big when I adjust people on social media, because I feel like I try to be myself, whether I don't know what I'm saying sometimes, like I forget my train of thought or whatever, or, this, that. I just try to film it, because then people are like, all right, that's like who he is as a person. He's not a perfect person, because no one's perfect. And people try to portray this perfect image, and it honestly just creates a depressed society. So I think spreading that authenticity and building your own personal brand is now more important more than ever, because with AI taking over to a certain degree, people are going to crave that more than ever, like crazy amounts. So yeah.
No, I completely agree. That's why we're sitting here right now, having an honest, and that's why I actually value long form content. Like, I probably won't even touch this podcast in its entirety. I'll probably put a little intro at the beginning, but the conversation itself, I think that's what the beauty of podcasting is so genuine, and it is fulfilling in a sense, because you are able to comprehend a full idea and get a full perspective, as opposed to a 15, 20-second clip. And I think that you saw the rise of podcasting probably during COVID, when everybody was kind of isolated.
Right.
And me personally, my only form of kind of breaking down ideas to like fully perceive ideas. And, it's like the lunch table conversation where you're arguing about, when I was in sixth grade, we were arguing about whether or not Jameis Winston was going to win the MVP after throwing for, what did he throw? 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions.
That was like a college conversation for me.
Yeah. I was like, Jameis should win it. He just threw for 5,000 yards, Like that back and forth conversation, obviously it develops into more sophisticated topics, but, we lacked that during COVID. And I think that podcasting now more than ever is really important. And you even saw it with the election and, really big and impactful things that a lot of people can perceive as, kind of bulletproof to social media or bulletproof to things like podcasts are now, being heavily influenced by honest and genuine and unfiltered conversations.
It's crucial. That's what America is founded on, is people come up with ideas and you have your freedom of speech. And if you suppress that in any way, then people are going to get pissed off. It might be a certain group, right? Whether you talk about politics, the right and the left, maybe the left is going to be really happy that the right was suppressed. And then guess what? Then eventually it turns around and it messes on them, and then they wish it wasn't that way, which is why, it's crucial for, just allowing that. And now times are different than they were 5 years ago, 100%, because you really weren't able to say certain things that you should be able to say, regardless if they're right or wrong. An opinion's an opinion. And losing that will make you lose critical thinking, and critical thinking is already declining with the rise of AI. If you don't critically think, then you're obviously not getting smarter. You're not challenging ideas, and then change eventually just doesn't happen. People just conform and say, yeah, that's right, that's that way. What if you look back and say, well, maybe it isn't. Let me try to figure this out. And someone says, well, there's tons of research to back it up. I'm like, okay, but let's think of the practicality. Let's look at the research and break it down. And then when you start that conversation, then it's all over the place, right? But it should be challenged at the end of the day. Chiropractic research should be challenged just like, regular medicine should be challenged. It's just as important because that's really what America is founded on. It's not, this is the way, my way or the highway. It's, well, you could go that way, and a lot of people do go that way, but I'm going to take the back roads because I know the back roads maybe have less accidents. I want to go that way. I don't care if it's slower. And that is crucial to developing your brain and improving yourself as a person. And pretty much everyone that's watching this knows that if you don't critically challenge very common thoughts, then that change doesn't happen. And then over time, people just conform. And then at some point, maybe it does get overturned because times change and people find out new things. And then suddenly everyone forgets about all the critical thinking. It was like, oh yeah, you were right. And then so it's just people have short-term memory, and they're like, oh yeah, that was right. COVID's a prime example of that. People are just like, oh yeah, you were right. Things were suppressed. I'm like, yeah, but that's why you can't challenge, or why you have to challenge information that's being provided to you, especially in the media, because you just don't know. Like, you don't know what that person's incentive is, and you don't know if it's actually true. And I see people who just, oh, this is this way, and there's nothing you can tell me otherwise. And I'm like, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? Should you have your core fundamental beliefs? Absolutely. And should you not believe certain things? Probably. But in my opinion, if someone hates chiropractic, sometimes I don't even tell them a chiropractor. I'm curious why. Or if someone, especially some of my colleagues or people are like hate medicine and are like, I'm never taking a pill in my life. I'm like, why, right? And it goes both ways, and that allows me to make the best possible decision for myself, my future family, my current family, my parents and stuff, and my, significant other and stuff, like making the right decision for that. So, that's why critical thinking is huge, because it's just, it's being lost. And COVID was just a perfect example of why we can't let that happen again to a certain degree.
Absolutely. And if you think about it from a historical perspective, it's definitely not easy to challenge the status quo or challenge, norms or preconceived notions or whatever. Like, if you think about it, like Abraham Lincoln challenged the status quo, fought against a system, and ultimately cost him his life. Yeah. Same thing as Martin Luther King, same thing as Socrates, people who opened the conversation in ways that it had never been opened before. Obviously history favors them now, right, but it did cost them their life. And I feel as though on a much more microcosmic scale, you can experience that when you challenge ideas within, maybe your small circle of friends or the small circle of colleagues, or, areas of your reputation can obviously be tarnished, but those who are bold enough and I'd say confident enough to, be assertive in that sense, you can make an impact. You can sway the hearts and minds of people. And I think that it's important. And I think that it has been restored since COVID. I think that was kind of like the bottom of the chasm for free speech and free thought, and obviously like critical thinking. But I think that we are seeing somewhat of a resurgence of that, and I think it's actually scary with the way that AI is progressing now. Yeah. We could see a suppression of that resurgence. So that's interesting. I'm big into AI. He knows that's all I freaking talk about. But yeah, I think it is very interesting.
Yeah. I think it's the future. And going back to what you said, like, these people are portrayed, like MLK, obviously, and some of these other guys, as heroes. And maybe during their time, people are like, this dude's freaking crazy. Why? He's disagreeing with the fact that you drink water when you're dehydrated? That makes no sense. Like, some common thought that makes sense to you, challenged by someone like that, you think he's crazy. And then in history, he's seen as a genius, right? That's why you really shouldn't care about what people think to a certain degree. You should really focus on your true and tried beliefs, like what you truly believe is true and getting that message out. And then people will follow you. People will see that message and see how genuine you are and how confident you are, and they'll follow you. And that's when a movement starts, whatever it is, whether it's healthcare or anything, right? And everyone knows that. And so that's huge, because at the end of the day, we're all going to die. I don't care if Elon comes up with some crazy convention, or invention, and we all can, resurrect down the road. Eventually, whether you're spiritual or religious, you die at some point. And so all that matters is, are you living your purpose? Are you living a fulfilled life? Are you happy? And, setting yourself up down the road to maintain that, right? And continually better yourself is huge, right? And I think that's a core value of mine, and why. And I grew up from a family, and even backtrack more, I grew up in a very liberal family. And I challenged the ideas of some of my brothers and even, my mom. And that really led me to believe that, no, this isn't the way. This is what I believe is better. If I didn't challenge that, then I probably would just be conforming and just listening to them, especially as the youngest brother too, 3 older brothers, you're going to listen to them to a certain degree. And then as you get older, you're like, that doesn't make any sense, right? Politics aside, everyone's has some sort of epiphany like that at some point in their life. So I think it's huge to not care what other people think and focus more on results and being yourself and staying, close to your core values. Being open-minded still. Core values can change, right? You have certain ones, whether it's you believe in God or whatever it is, where that's your foundation. But you have other ones where, you can't be selfish and naive to the point where you can't hear someone else's opinion because it gets you so irritated. You have to be open-minded, or at least hear them out and understand why, because then guess what? Then you might even change your point of view or work with them, or they'll turn their heads around. They'll be more receptive to you. And then if your message is if my message is to get everyone adjusted in the entire planet, then, I'm going to have to talk to people that disagree with it. And so learning the best way to communicate and making it personable is huge. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of our audience is, maybe former athletes. I know my personal journey. I wanted to play football in college. I, had some D2 interest, up in Maine and New Hampshire, and, some of these smaller schools, smaller areas. And I, wanted to remain involved in sports. I'd grown up playing sports my entire life. And I said, okay, so I could either go play, D2 football somewhere, or I could start a media platform and talk to professionals in sports and talk to professionals in athletics and, people who own businesses and people who have pursued their passion for sports in a different way. And I'm obviously trying to do the same thing now. What's your word of advice for anybody who's, listening to this now that says, you know what, I want to remain involved in sports. I'm no longer playing sports at a, organized competitive level. Chiropractic medicine sounds cool. I think I would, like being a chiropractor. I think that would fulfill me. What's your word of advice? Let's say they're 20 years old right now. Mm-hmm. How should they approach this opportunity?
So this is going to be a little religious for a sec, but I believe, everything happens for a reason. You're put in a certain spot for said reason, and you have to listen to some messages that are sent to you. Now, sometimes those can be good messages, sometimes those can be bad messages, and sometimes you're like, no, I don't care. I'm still going to do this, regardless if I've had injuries and I'm short and I want to be a baseball player, and people say you have to be 6'4" to play baseball and be good, or basketball, right? Let's say I'm 5'8", right? So, I think God sends messages that say, hey, this is more the direction for you to go. And whether it's listening to this podcast, whether it's something you saw, I feel like everyone has that intuitive sense where you're like, maybe this is reaching to me for a certain reason. And I feel like listening to that is harder to do when you're younger. And as you get older, you start to get more in tune with yourself and say, hey, yeah, this isn't for me. Let me go do something else. And it sounds like that was kind of something that happened to you, right? For me, it was very similar as to you, actually. I wanted to play baseball. I got a D2 offer in Pennsylvania. And I was like, man, I wanted to play D1. I was like, I'm going to play D1. And then my parents were like, no, just go to school, get your education. You can, maybe walk on the club team. And then I was like, fine. And then, sure enough, I wasn't good enough to even make the club team. The club team at Jamie was stacked. And then I was like, all right, well, you know what? There's something else out here for me. So letting your ego aside to a certain degree and saying, hey, is this truly for me? Is this truly going to make me happy? Is this truly my path? Are important questions to ask yourself, and listening to messages, that are sent to you intuitively are crucial. Another thing to answer that question is, if you are interested in a certain profession, one of the best things you can do is literally go see the day-to-day of that profession, right? For me, as a chiropractor, I had probably been to 10 or 15 offices, separate chiropractic offices, where I had seen the chiropractor and who they are and different styles of practice, and said, man, I could see myself doing this. This is a cool job. This is not me sitting at a desk all day. I'm literally BSing with people and helping people and making a good living off of it. This is something I could see myself doing. So the combination of those 2 points will help answer that question for you of, is this right for me? Is this meant for me? And let me go put myself in their shoes and see if this is something I want to actually do and I could see myself doing for the rest of my life. A lot of times people get caught up in money, or, oh, this is, lucrative. This person did this, right? But everyone has their own life, and figuring out what resonates with you the most and what you could physically see yourself doing and what you feel like you'd be best at doing too is huge, because then you're going to have more confidence and develop your skills probably better than if you didn't, to a certain degree. There's some caveats to that, like, public speaking. People are scared shitless sometimes, or being on podcasts, and sometimes you just have to do it. Which kind of goes into my second point, and see if it is something that you're good at, or something that, is cool and you could develop. Figuring out those 2 points is crucial in any profession, and figuring out what you want to do in life. Also another thing is seeking advice too. If you're, you have a mentor or someone you trust, parents, friends, whatever, they also can give you some good insight too. And also ChatGPT. ChatGPT can definitely help you too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think we could wrap up on that. I think that's very insightful. And I hope that out of, the hundreds of people that, hopefully thousands of people listen to this podcast, at least one of you guys can see a different side of, like we said, think critically about, a preconceived notion that you had, something that you once believed to be true, or something that you once believed to be false. Hopefully you can change your mind, and maybe even, see yourself in a position like Dr. Nick, and see yourself as a chiropractor, or, even in other alternative medicinal practice. Is that the proper terminology?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that this is a super insightful conversation. I've said it once, I'll say it again, that, this is a style of podcast that we're not familiar with, but it's actually like, this is the podcast that I would listen to. Like, I feel like I'm listening to a podcast. Well, I kind of am, but it's like something that I would listen to in my free time while I'm like cleaning my bedroom or something. And I think that you're very well spoken. I think that you communicate very effectively. And I thank you for your time. I thank you for the adjustment.
Of course.
And hopefully some of you guys, I know if you've made it this far, hopefully you've learned something.
Yeah.
And I know I have, and I think our guy Roman over there, shout out Roman, it's been great over there. He's our makeshift producer. This is his first ever podcast production, isn't it?
Nice.
Basically. But thank you, Nick. And
of course. If you guys ever have any questions about anything I said, disagree or agree, reach out to me. As you can tell, I'm pretty receptive to talking it out or hearing other people's opinions to even better myself, and it could help you out too. Because like I said, people are so quick to make assumptions and not know the facts. And so throwing your ego aside and really seeing where that person is coming from is crucial, and not even just that person's development, but yours, and understanding that, right? Empathy is a very popular human trait in mothers and just in the healthcare field, and being empathetic is huge, right? Putting yourself in their shoes and actually truly understanding where they're coming from will really help give you a lot of good insight of just the way the world works, and, figuring out yourself as a person. So yeah.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys. And if you're not following Nick on Instagram, and you have TikTok as well, that's correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So follow Nick on TikTok and Instagram. What's your username?
It's Dr. Nicholas Young on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube too. Yeah.
Beautiful. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. And if you haven't liked the video, like the video.
Like the freaking video. Come on now.
Like the video and stay diesel.